Today's video is sponsored by Ridge Wallet. Stay tuned till later in the video to learn more about our special 48-hour 30% off flash sale. Alright, so another one of Blizzard's pre-release Diablo 4 surveys popped up this week. Similar to the one we saw back in August, this presented several pre-order bundle package options and basically looks to confirm more or less what we should be expecting. We have enough information at this point to basically take a reasonable stab at it, so let's do. For starters, the new survey opened up with the typical phrasing for this sort of thing. Specifically, it said, shown below is a list of features/content that could potentially be offered as part of a bundle that includes the base Diablo 4 game. The listed offerings included early access to the game a few days before official release. The prior survey was a little more specific with timings, which we'll touch on in a moment. There was the Wings of the Founder, a back attachment to celebrate the launch of Diablo 4 and not obtainable in other ways. They also said no gameplay impact with these. There would be a mount to move through the world faster, which unlocks after the campaign. Hero skins, cosmetic changes for armor that include 5 skins, 1 for each class with an unlimited number of uses. Mount armor, which added visual cosmetics to your mount with no gameplay impact. And a free copy of the Diablo 2 remastered, as well as a free copy of Diablo 3. And finally, the Battle Pass with access to the first pass with rewards for playing that are cosmetic only. Now, outside of driving home the cosmetic and no gameplay impact nature of these offerings, this survey reinforces the last one with the additional new inclusion of offering free copies of Diablo 2 Remaster and Diablo 3. There were also some new accompanying concept arts for hero skins, the Wings of the Founder, a mount, and some mount armor. But yeah, otherwise, this survey almost exactly lines up with the last one. Now, you might recall this particular one popped up back in August and mostly had the same offerings. There were hero skins, the mount armor, the back adornment, the battle pass, and the early access. However, there were a few notable details and differences that are worth rehashing here. So for one, the prior survey also presented various bundles of the game's premium currency, which we now know is called Palladium, with options offering between $15 and $25 equivalent with the various bundles. And then beyond that, there was tiered early access. Specifically, there were options to purchase either a 2 or a 7-day head start, which of course means anyone who bought this more expensive package would be getting more days and earlier access versus the players who spent less. I am going to dive a bit more into some of the issues around this sort of thing, like letting consumers pay extra over others for earlier access, but before we do that, let's go forward with Blizzard's pre-order plans. With all of this information, I think we can now safely lay out what seems likely that Blizzard will be doing for pre-order bundles. Also, I want to just say, given everything else about Diablo 4 that seems to be falling in line with Lost Ark, its shared open world nature, the MMO light elements of the game, the resource gathering in the open world, all of these different systems, the mount system, there's a long list of similarities between the two. I think it's also not unreasonable to think that they were also paying real close attention to how Lost Ark monetized, and specifically, for the sake of this video, what they did for pre-orders. So let's take a shot here. Let's say that they have 3 tiers of pre-order bundles. Let's call it the basic version, and I'm gonna actually say this might be priced like at $49.99, not a full $60. It will come with just a copy of Diablo 4. Maybe there's like a 2 or 3 day head start, say 1,000 Palladium, and access to the first battle pass. And then there's a mid-tier, which could be like $69.99. It will have all of the stuff with the basic version, but maybe instead of 1,000, there's 2,000 Palladium, and they add some more cosmetics, like say exclusive wings and the hero skins. And then there'll be a premium tier, maybe $99.99, maybe even higher than that. It'll have everything else but a ton of Palladium, like the 6,000 or 7,000 Palladium, more exclusive cosmetics, a specialty mount, some mount armor, and emotes. We actually do know that the game is going to have some sort of system, like for example, these headstones, which will be tied to PvP. When your character dies, a headstone pops up. We saw that, something like that, in that leaked friends and family stuff that came out not too long ago. So I don't know if there's going to be emotes like do a dance or point your thumb down in this game, but there are going to be, at the very least, cosmetic tombstones as part of the game's monetization setup. So obviously the exact configuration, the pricing, and what is in each package, it's all guesswork at this point. But I think, like, based on the 2 surveys that they've sent out, as well as what we know about the game's monetization plans from that quarterly blog post not too long ago, and some of those friends and family leaks, all of this comes together to put something along these lines as entirely possible. These past 2 surveys overlap almost 100%, with the only main differences being the last one mentioned the Palladium, the pay for currency in the game that's used in the cash shop, and this recent survey mentions free copies of their older games, which I guess that's kind of like a throw-in gimme, but it's also strange because they're not really incentivized to give us their old games. They don't want us playing D2 or D3. They would rather us play D4, as that game's going to be way more heavily monetized than either one of those, so they're incentivized to that. Yeah, I just don't know what the likelihood of them actually giving us free copies of games that make them less money, but we'll see. It's possible. It was in the survey, so it's possible as anything else that was in that survey. Either way, what seems likely, if not probable, is that these pre-order bundles will come in multiple variations, and they will have Palladium, mounts, hero skins, wings, and access to the first season battle pass. That much is obvious. And then there's the early access. Now, the biggest question for me at this point centers around the early access. This is also my biggest point of potential concern and criticism. Do they go forward with the idea of selling early access? But what's more than that is, if they do, will they also then tier it so that people who pay extra will get more of a head start? And now I want to talk about early access and everything that can potentially play into it. But first, let's access a moment for a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, Ridge Wallet. These are the durable wallets built to last and designed to help streamline what you carry. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I've been using one myself for the past year or so and have really enjoyed it. I'll carry my ID, a handful of cards, and that's basically it. It's turned out I haven't really missed having a massive wallet loaded with stuff that I never ended up using. Some of Ridge Wallet's features include the ability to hold up to 12 cards, plus having room for cash. They are made of durable materials and come with a lifetime warranty, as well as a 45-day risk-free trial. And they're offered in over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber, burnt titanium, and many others, as well as having over 50,000 5-star reviews. Now, currently, they've got a pretty big limited time flash sale going on for the next 48 hours. Anyone who uses code FORCE30 will get a full 30% off my favorite, the Gunmetal Ridge Wallet. This discount is substantially bigger than ones they typically do, so if you've ever been interested, now's a good time. Beyond the flash sale window, using code FORCE at any time will get you the standard 10% discount on any purchase. Head on over to ridge.com/force to learn more. Okay, so early access. Here we go. Paid for head starts are a bit of a landmine with games like this because there's a lot of potential issues. But really, I think what it boils down to is what, if any, sort of competitive advantage does having early access to the game give you? There are 2 major points that come to mind when this topic comes up. One is player power advantage. So with you having the extra time to level your character and get better gear before others, the advantage that comes from this would include things like having an advantage in PvE if there are leaderboards to push, and any potential rewards that come from getting a high rank within those leaderboards beyond just boasting, but also PvP. We do know Diablo 4 has PvP. There will be open world zones where players can engage with one another, designated areas basically for PvP combat. There is rewards associated with doing well in these spaces as well. Now, what we still don't know is a lot of the specifics about how this works, and this has a big impact on this early access potentially, because like, are these PvP zones, are they gated by level? Are they gated by gear score? Do they have any kind of matching of people with similar power levels? Or do they just normalize gear and level differences so that it's all about player skill and proper ability usage, and that is it? We just don't know most of these answers. That's the problem. But there is absolutely a scenario where a paid for head start would give some players a significant advantage here. The fact that they're higher levels or that they have better gear, even just having more access and more playtime with their character, but actual stuff like a health and damage advantages over others. All of which, again, depending on how Blizzard balances PvP in the open world, could give a huge advantage to people who start early. But outside of player power advantage, there is also the resource an economic advantage. Whether that's because early access means you will have more gold, which is the game's basic in-game currency, or just the fact that you have access to higher tier resources and items, and with either, what sort of advantage does this give you in the game's economy and trading, of which we do know a bit about so far. Which leads into the next point actually, it's that you can't really talk about early access and this economic advantages without talking about trading. So we do know that Diablo 4 will have a limited trading. It is not full-on open trade. It is the case that certain weapons, gear, and items will be restricted while others are fully tradable. So here is what we know for certain as of this moment. Blizzard has said that they want most of your character's best gear and power gains to come from monster drops. They basically want you playing and getting stuff directly yourself. We also know with this that Diablo 4 will have a smart loot system similar to Diablo 3. Simply speaking, this means that loot drops will be usable for your character like 99% of the time. You will not be seeing a ton of druid gear while playing on your barbarian. It can happen, and it will happen occasionally, but it will be rare. However, whatever gear is dropping, how much of it can you trade? Currently, it looks like all loot in the game will fall into one of three categories. First category is no trade restrictions. Many of the game's basic items will be tradable an unlimited number of times. Then there will be bind on trade. These will be considered mid-tier items that can only be traded a single time. And then finally, there will be bind on pickup items, which will include some of the most powerful items in the game, the best stuff for your characters, and these can never be traded ever. Now, we did get some further details thanks to a quote from Diablo 4's game director, Joe Shelley, where he said, "We want to integrate trading more closely in Diablo 4, so we're exploring several systems to do that. The one we're currently leaning towards is one where there'd be three types of trading, like we just mentioned. A type of item that's tradable all the time with no restrictions, like consumables, crafting mats, and certain armor. Then there would also be items that can be traded once and then bound, and then items that can never be traded, bind on pickup. Now, this quote was from all the way back in 2019, and it is possible that plans have changed since then. But if not, what stands out the most to me here is the line that there will be no trade restrictions on crafting materials. And if that is still true, circling back to the types of advantages early access can give, that means it is quite possible that beyond player power, early access will give a big economic advantage. And that is not even with talking about gold. The basic in-game currency, what you'll be getting for pretty much all the activities you do, if that is tradable between players, it will also directly impact the economy and the various gold sinks. Like we know there is gambling for rare items, and that this gambling can reward some of the most powerful items in the game, so having more gold means more chances of getting the best stuff, and then how that best stuff plays into PvE leaderboards or anything competitive like PvP. Also, gold will be used to purchase basic items and materials from vendors, which again means early access to the game would give those players the head start on all of that, raking up gold and other resources, giving them an edge in the trading economy, even with limitations. Now, whether or not gold is tradable, as far as I've researched, is still up in the air. Recent leaks from the friend and family testing do say that it is not tradable, but we are not sure if the friends and family version of the game is what's going to be in the final version of the game. It's just, again, uncertain, and we don't have official word. We'll have to see. Also up in the air are trading for items that aren't technically gear. Like, what about things like runes and rune words? These will have a power advantage, and if they're tradable, will also then have their own markets. Now, I do want to add here, all of these advantages that come from early access will also just happen naturally as soon as the game launches. Like, the player who plays 2 hours on day one will lag behind the player who plays 24 hours straight. Whoever hits max level and starts finding legendaries first will have a window of advantage in PvP, like I was talking about, and also in currency and resources and all of those other things we mentioned. This power gap between players is natural. It will just happen whether they had access to the game early or everyone played at the same time on launch day. I think the question is, like, should that that sort of advantage, the power advantage or the economic advantage, be rewarded for someone who paid extra or who pre-ordered the game, getting that extra early access and then having that leg up immediately on those who don't. Funny enough, this also is more or less the entire debate about pay to win in gaming. Ultimately, though, the real winner in all of this is the companies happily accepting our money in exchange for power, whether that is selling stuff directly or just selling access early. Whatever the case, though, for the most part, what's interesting, and I don't want to neglect this, is that the people who are bothered the most by these sort of advantages, like the early access advantages, are the people who are probably going to have early access anyway. Myself included. I fully recognize this. Like, if you actually care about the game enough to be concerned about these advantages, you are probably buying it and you will probably have early access. So it actually won't affect you either. And this is true unless, and here's the main caveat, unless they go with the tiered approach. If they go about offering different head start times based on the package that you purchase, at that point, it becomes another system of haves and have-nots. Like, oh, you can only afford the $50 pre-order package. Well, those who spent $100 will get to play 5 days sooner. And that is the route that I absolutely hope Blizzard avoids. If they're gonna say, hey, pre-order our games so we get those numbers up so we can boast about how many people pre-ordered Diablo 4 and you get to play 3 days early, but it doesn't matter the tier that you buy, that, as I mentioned, is just kind of a wash because the people who are affected and who would care the most are the ones who are probably doing it anyways. You know what I mean? Whether you're doing it on March 19th or March 16th, if you plan to play the game whenever it comes out, barring like work restrictions, you're gonna play the game whenever it comes out, right? So it doesn't matter. Like, at that point, it's kind of a wash. What I really don't want to see, though, is if Blizzard makes it so that some people can spend more to play earlier. Something else I also want to touch on in all of this, because one of the other things, the conversations that I've seen, were complaints about those wings. The Reddit thread in particular, where I was reading about this recently, was mostly filled with complaints about wings being in Diablo 4. So let me just clear it up here. It is happening. 1000% Diablo 4 will have wings. The survey from the other month mentioned wings. This recent survey mentions wings. And in the leaked footage from the friends and family testing that we saw last week, back adornments were available as one of the cosmetic bundles in the shop. Specifically, there was this backpack item in the Tools of the Hunt bundle. So yeah, back adornments, which include wings, are going to be in D4. This is guaranteed. What is all the fuss? Well, most of the complaints are basically that it's immersion breaking, especially with D4 being set in this more like grim setting, this darker tone, having these bright, colorful cosmic wings and butterfly wings and stuff like you see in D3. Some people just really hate how that pulls you out of it. And I saw in this thread, I saw a lot of people saying, well, hey, it's simple. You know, maybe Blizzard can just put an option in there. You can check a little box to hide all cosmetic wings. My guy. Is not happening. Not in a billion years. They want to sell you wings, okay? They are not going to give you the option to hide that. It's not unheard of. There are games that do this, that let you, I think in particular For Honor is a game that lets you hide some of the like flashy cosmetic stuff in the game, some of the flashier finishers with flames and light beams and all sorts of stuff if you want to stay more immersed. I don't have the confidence in Blizzard that, assuming wings are in the game, that they would give people an option to disable that, because the whole idea is to entice. They want you to see character skins, they want you to see wings, they want you to see anything that can be purchased so that you might think, oh, that looks pretty cool, and hop in the shop and see if you can get it yourself. You know, there's still a lot of questions and concerns around the monetization, but as I mentioned in my most recent D4 video, I am generally still very, very interested in the game. I think it is shaping up well from the most recent gameplay we saw from that Friends and Family leak. Questions remain, though, about stuff like seasons, you know, and just this live service approach. So the whole concept, if I were to sum up their blog post about monetization, is, hey, we want to support this game. It's going to be live service. We want constant updates. To fund those constant updates, base sale of the game is not enough. We need microtransactions, we need cosmetics, we need you to buy Palladium, we need to sell you all sorts of stuff in addition to the base game and the expansions. The concern is whether they live up to that, whether they're able to keep the game regularly updated. You know, seasons in Diablo 3, they are fun for like a couple of days. During the power climb, it's pretty cool, but you kind of plateau as you are just incrementally climbing like greater rifts. It gets pretty boring wearing pretty quick, at least personally. That's how I feel. I like jumping in, it's fun, but wears off pretty quickly. And then also the live service of D4, does it justify the new microtransaction heavy approach? Best case is yes. Diablo 3 seasons and content updates are nothing compared to what they end up delivering in Diablo 4. Worst case is no, and seasons play out just like Diablo 3, and we still also have to buy expansions on top of the cash shop, the season pass, and all of that. Questions that will remain unanswered until the game releases. Though, however, now that we have seen multiple different surveys, it is pretty obvious Blizzard plans to sell multiple tiers of pre-orders, and they're going to include that laundry list of different items. We know that for sure. And again, it really boils down, most for me, the biggest concern is if you're going to have early access and pre-orders, whatever, fine. It just shifts the launch date basically for the people who are going to play in anyways. Just don't do the tiered system. I just think it's about as worse of a move as you could do in this particular situation. And yeah, that is it for this video. Taking a look at Blizzard plans, potential plans, see what happens. Thank you so much for watching. As always, hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.